It is June 11th, 2022. I'm in Como, Colorado at the Como Roundhouse. Today is a volunteer work day. This is the last day of a volunteer work week. And so there's two groups of people here today. The group of people that's been here all week, well, they're not here yet, but there's a group that's been doing track work and other general kind of infrastructure restoration. And then there's a group that is working on the steam locomotive inside the roundhouse, and they're partially here. So this is the main to Gunnison, Colorado. It crossed the road and headed off past those outhouses and on down to Gunnison. And then beyond the train station there, the depot, there is a main that breaks off to the right and heads up those hills off to the right. And that goes to Denver by way of Jefferson, Kenosha Pass, Bailey's, etc. And then also on the other side of the depot there is a branch to the left, and that line went to Breckenridge and ultimately Leadville. So this is the piece of track that I've been working on this week. I did a lot of dirt moving and assisting the people who are doing the tamping. I didn't really have the patience or the muscle to do the tamping, so I guess I moved probably about maybe 9 yards of material, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, I don't know. This is the water tank base, and that was constructed last year. They're going to paint the rest of it today. And at some point they're going to put a floor in and a timber cylinder and a conic roof. And the white water tanks down there beyond the gondolas, there's two of them there. I donated those. There will be two more, so a total of four will go in the on the deck there. This, of course, is the spout. And so I guess I was running out of energy a little bit when I finished this spot. It doesn't look too good. Anyhow, so the material was set out kind of randomly and had to be distributed to the areas where it was needed to raise the track. And lining and leveling was kind of fun, so we used track jacks to raise the rail and ties off the ground to the correct height, and then we would raise the rail another couple clicks beyond the destination height and tamp ballast under the ties, release the jacks, and then hope that the track was at the right level. We did some lateral adjustment here using a Jeep and a tow strap. So the Jeep pulled the rail that way just a little bit to get things straightened out. So here's where I did the bulk of the, I don't know, it's mostly landscaping work, I suppose. I ran out of soil here, ran out of material, but we got this all lined and leveled here, and it looks pretty respectable now. Beyond the gate is property owned by the owner of the eating house, so the depot and the track in front of the eating house is it's under lease. There's a 20-year lease for that from the eating house owner. And the property situation here is interesting. To get to kind of the furthest practical point on the Breckenridge line, the track has to pass through two properties, one rather small property, and it just kind of nicks that. And then there's about a 45-acre ranch. It's currently listed for $2 million. The owner won't allow an easement through his land. So my suggestion was that the organization here find some way to finance the land, put the easement on it that they need, and then resell it. And so they'd lose a little money in that transaction, but they'd gain the easement they need. Then over there, on the other side of the little valley, you can see a scratch left to right. That is the Denver main. And beyond that, behind the white shed, there's there's a gap where there needs to be a trestle, and the property line for the roundhouse is roughly there. Then the land is owned by Park County, and a little bit further, a little bit beyond that, it's owned by the BLM. And so getting easements over there is maybe a little challenging. There's some concern on in part of animal advocates or something regarding elk migration paths. So if the track was active, somehow that would interfere with elk migration. But that doesn't make a lot of sense, because just beyond that ridge, and you can see the vehicles moving, is US Highway 285, which the traffic counts on Highway 285 are extremely high on the weekend and fairly significant on weekdays. The property over there beyond the crossbuck, where there's a trailer and a red car, that's a single wide trailer with like an appendage built onto it, and that just sold for $750 for unpaid taxes. I asked the owner of the eating house about buying that from him last year in August, and he said that it was tied up in litigation related to his divorce, but the tax records show that it was sold June 15th of last year. So either his ex-wife was the owner, so I don't know, there's speculation that maybe she didn't pay the tax to somehow spite the guy. I don't know. Anyhow, let's take a look. So then there's some somewhat distressed rolling stock around here, like this thing. I'm sure it's of historic significance, but it's going to take a lot of work. Here's a switch that we assembled the other day. So one of the members fabricated this plate here, and we placed the switch stand and hooked everything up and lined everything up. If I was doing this, I think I would have done one thing slightly differently. I would have left some thread exposed here so that there's adjustment left in that direction, but it all lines up just fine right now. So what happens is this stub here slides left and right, and that's kind of that's not how modern switches work. So note that this switch has the on this switch the flange of the rail is secured as opposed to the web. But then this other switch down here, I like it better. I think it's a better design. On this switch, the web of the rail is responsible for sort of indexing and registering the rail. There's a lot of variance in the geometry of these sticks of rail around here. There's two different weights, 65 and 70 pounds, and the flanges aren't the same width. And let's see, where's my switch with the funky gaps? Maybe it's down here. This is the depot. It was basically falling down when they got here. It took about $400,000 to get the depot in its current state. Shoot, I've lost track of where the neat switch was. Yeah, this is it. But it doesn't have any, it's missing hardware here. But if you look over here, you'll see that there's this really beefy, hot formed piece of steel here with notches in it. And I don't know, to me that seems like a more appealing design than the other one. So this used to be a hotel and restaurant, and it's been open as a B&B recently, and a bar and a restaurant, but apparently the season was too short to make that worthwhile. So it's just been closed. Not much going on in the town. The only thing that's open regularly is by the flag. There's a art gallery / post office. And this building on the corner here looks like it's got about a minute to live. This boxcar until recently was sitting on the top of Boreas Pass. It's a nice, complete, original boxcar in nice shape. I said nice twice. Ooh, I rhymed. Anyhow, so this switch stand has no switch. There's some unusual fellow, there he is, no, that's not him, living in the mini storage unit. His primary function seems to be interfering with volunteers, but that's just my opinion. Alright, so then there's a couple of the volunteers are hanging out in this trailer here. Too bad I'm shooting into the sun. And here's where the tools are stored, track maintenance tools. It's surprising how expensive a large wrench is. I went on McMaster trying to find a 1.5-inch spud wrench, thinking I might donate some wrenches, because a lot of time around here is spent. Well, there just doesn't seem to be enough copies of each kind of tool you need. So I was going to donate some wrenches, but the 1.5-inch spud wrench was like $194, so I didn't buy a bunch of those. But I'm going to find a better source. And there's some things I want to donate so that things can occur more quickly here. The effort of the volunteers here has just been amazing. It's unbelievable what's gotten done here. So this, I think, is a boxcar from Cumbers and Toltec Scenic Railroad. When they first started out, they didn't have any passenger equipment, so they cut windows into boxcars. And that worked for a long time, but then they started building their own passenger equipment on flat cars. And I guess that freed up some of their boxcars. Here's the turntable. This is one of my favorite parts. So just one person can move it with nothing on it. The trick is to put the load right in the center to balance the load on the turntable so that you don't have any friction on the ends. You don't want to have the rollers on the ends bearing any weight, because that makes it a lot harder to turn. But if you get it balanced properly, one person can turn a lot of things, I suppose. I had no difficulty turning it with some people and a couple work cars on it. So here is Klondike Kate. Klondike Kate is being retubed right now. So the front flue plate is out. There's the boiler. Back there you can see the holes where all the flues will go, and the boiler tubes are laying on the ground over here. There they are, big pile. And over here is the front flue plate, which is being drilled very carefully and precisely. So all the holes are laid out, and they're being drilled with this interesting drill. And then all of those have to be welded in place, both ends. Over here is a gondola that we just painted last week. Somebody from the Colorado Railroad Museum did that. And so work on the locomotive proceeds through the winter, or did proceed through the winter, and they heated the place with that old stove there. Here's the view through the firebox of the boiler. Isn't that something? There's the throttle, brake, pressure gauge. And this is a new cylinder head. They broke a cylinder head last year. This locomotive was in an accident at some point, and I think something got, not here, when it was in Alaska. I'm not really sure what is sprung or twisted here, but it's not detectable. I didn't even know that it was in an accident. Cute little locomotive. This is the tender for the locomotive. They lifted it up the other day to get the trucks out and discovered that I don't know what you call it, I'd call it a kingpin. The kingpins that secure the trucks were damaged or something, or the bearing, I don't know the terminology here, but the bearing plate, the donut, disintegrated when they lifted the tender off of the trucks. So they've got a little extra work to do there. There's a couple stock cars here. This one was cut down over the course of the last week. The plan is to replace some of the frame timbers here and then rebuild the pen, or whatever you want to call it. We carefully picked up all the hardware, grab irons and whatnot, and put them up here so they won't corrode. My favorite part is this brake wheel, cast iron brake wheel. Just like most Lionel toys, the brake wheel has a little bit of a bend to it. That's how it looks when it's installed. Somebody has a Rivian pickup truck. That's interesting. So it looks like they're going to they're making this flat car into some kind of crude open car. That'll be fun to ride. Over here there's an interesting and eclectic assortment of boilers and random stuff. Oh, so there's volunteers that have a skid loader. One volunteer has a skid loader and the other has this backhoe. And so they bring those up here now and then, and that's really helpful. That's a pretty substantial donation, because hourly rental for equipment like that is pretty pricey. So this is this person is making a very significant and generous donation by bringing his backhoe up here. Over here there's some frogs. Ribbit, ribbit. A lot of variety there. Interesting wear here. Alright, I think that's the end of our tour. Signing off from Como, Colorado.